Good day and welcome to the Federal Youth Network's virtual learning series. This is the GC101 on understanding classification. So please note that this session will be offered in English for the first 30 minutes, followed at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the French session. Alors, veuillez noter que cette session sera offerte en anglais pour les premières 30 minutes et que la présentation en français suivra à 14 heures, heure de l'Est. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and happy to be presenting and from this territory. I'd like to acknowledge that many of us are joining from different territories across Canada, and in the chat we will put the link if you are unaware of what traditional ancestral territory you are on right now, that you can check it via that link. As we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space and questions by using the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar platform. Please share your questions in English for the English session and in French for the French session. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button, and that will help our moderator identify which questions should be asked to our subject matter expert for today's session. So with that, I will pass over to Marcus for moderation for today's session. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Joshua. So hello, everybody. My name is Marcus. Just a little bit about myself. I'm an epidemiologist at the Public Health Agency of Canada. I did my master's at McGill University and have been in the public service for about 2 years. And a little fun side thing about me is that also too, I work in esports and I'm a commentator, hence this photo here where you can see me doing my thing over there. But to start things out today, we've got a couple of questions just in the format of a poll. So the poll is going to be launching. You should see it pop up onto your screen right now. And just feel free to answer those questions. This is not mandatory and it's not a test or anything like that. But as we're kind of priming up this actual session, we want to just kind of gauge everybody's knowledge on and information on how well they do know classifications. So feel free to vote in that poll right now. And as soon as we've got enough answers there, then we're going to be taking a look at the results over there. And then I'm going to be introducing today's speaker. Once again, I'd like to reiterate that if you do have any questions, please feel free to just ask them into the chat and then use that thumbs up feature just to see what the most timely and important questions are to ask. So, hey, do you know what your group letters stand for? Well, apparently 69% of you said yes. So that's actually really good. And for our second question, do you know which other classifications do similar work? And the leading response there was 37% saying no. So there is a little bit to learn today, which is perfect. We've only got about half an hour here. And just like that, I'm going to introduce today's speaker. Evelyn, why don't you unmute yourself and give yourself a little bit of an introduction?
Yes, hello. So my name is Evelyn Martini. I'm a classification manager at Shared HR Services. We are within Public Services and Procurement Canada. So I've been in the federal public service for more than 20 years, but about 15 of them in classification in different departments in human resources branch. And right now, the organization I work with, we offer HR services to small departments and agencies mainly, but also to other federal government departments. So yeah, so that's for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Evelyn. So basically how this 30-minute session is going to work is Evelyn is going to give a quick presentation as to everything that you kind of need to know when it comes to this classification. And then we will be going into a Q&A before just ending the session. So without further ado, Evelyn, feel free to share your screen and the floor is yours.
Okay, so share. There you go. Oh, not the right one. Okay, so yes, so welcome everyone to this session on classification in the core public administration. So without further ado, we'll start. Sorry, my bad. Okay. So here we will start by explaining what is the purpose of classification. So as mentioned here, it's a systematic method that is used to determine the relative value of the work. So by doing that, we evaluate the characteristics of a position by creating a hierarchy of work through the occupational group and level in the core public administration. So just to be clear, what we mean here by the core public administration, it's 22 departments and 59 other portions. There's going to be a link further along that gives you more information on that. But it does not include separate agencies such as the Canada Revenue Agency or the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, for example. So this is what I'm going to be speaking about is just for the core public administration. So classification, it also sets the stage for appropriate compensation in exchange for the work performed, because the salary for your position is negotiated using the occupational group structure as a framework for collective bargaining. And a bit further along, we're going to see what the occupational group structure means. And just a note also to mention that the classification program of the CPA is managed by the Treasury Board Secretariat Central. So briefly, just to let you know, the legislative foundation of classification. So it is laid out in the Financial Administration Act. So you can see there the few articles that we refer to in terms of classification. But also there are some elements that come from the Canadian Human Rights Act, namely the 4 non-discriminatory criteria that are required to write a job description. So these are the skills, efforts, responsibility, and working conditions. We're going to speak about that a bit later on as well. So this needs to be described in a job description and needs to be evaluated by classification. And there are also a number of policies, directives, tools that give us further guidance and further framework for our work in classification. So just to situate where classification is within overall human resources, so it goes from left to right in terms of a process in the human resources areas. So the first one should be HR planning, where you plan for all your organizational and personnel needs. And moving further from that, this is where classification comes in, because classification consists of organizational design, where you need to determine what your organization will look like, how the work will be distributed. And then to describe that further, you need job descriptions for those positions within your organizational structure. So those need to be written. And after that, we need to analyze the work stream, namely the group, subgroup of a position, proceed with job evaluation, which will eventually lead us to determining an occupational group, perhaps subgroup, and level of a position. And once you have that within your structure, then you can proceed with staffing positions, associated compensation, and learning and development of your employees, and hopefully not too much labor relations. So in terms of evaluating a position, so determining what classification a position will be, there are a number of sources of information that are used to support this work. So the first piece of information that we are using is the job description. So this is the responsibility of the delegated manager of the group. So a job description, it's an official document that records responsibilities assigned by management and the demands of a work. And it provides the basis for job evaluation. It is written and approved by the delegated manager. Written, usually the manager will require some help for that. The supervisor is different than the delegated manager, may also be asked to review and sign a job description to confirm that the work described corresponds to the work performed. And the employee in the position, if there is one, is also invited to sign their job description to confirm that they have been consulted and that they have had the occasion to comment the job description. So this is what their signature means. And job descriptions, they are subject to a template that is provided to CPA organizations by the Treasury Board Secretariat. The other piece of information that supports job evaluation is the organizational chart. And again, the delegated manager for the organization needs to approve the structure of their organization. So that chart depicts the reporting relationship of the position that we are evaluating and provides the organizational context necessary for job evaluation. So we can see how the work is distributed within this group. The next piece of information that we are using is the occupational groups and or subgroups definitions. This is provided by the central agency, the Treasury Board Secretariat. So to define an occupational group, it's a series of jobs or occupations that combine like work together based on the nature of the functions performed. So sometimes when this work is very broad, the work is further organized into subgroups to further align similar work. And the last important piece of information in supporting job evaluation is a job evaluation or classification standards, again, provided by the central agency. So this is an official tool that is approved by the Treasury Board, and it's used by accredited classification advisors to evaluate a job description and to identify the group, perhaps subgroup, and level of a position. It allows the incumbent of the position to receive fair compensation for the work performed. And those job evaluation or classification standards, they are developed by the employer and user departments and responsible unions. And there's one job evaluation standard or classification standard for each occupational group. So if we go into a bit more detail for all those pieces of information. So here you have a quick graph of how a job description is structured. So it kind of looks like a pyramid. So each of the elements support each other. So the first one, the top of the pyramid, it's the identifying information. So this is general information about the position, the title, the position number, the reporting, security language requirements. So what identifies this position. The next piece of information is the client service results. So it explains the raison d'être of the position. So it describes the products and services that the position delivers and the results of the activities that make up the work. And this statement is important because it sets the tone for the rest of the job description and it reflects the primary purpose of the work. Hence, help us allocate the job to the proper occupational group. Further supporting the job description is the key activities. So these are activities that are assigned and performed by the person in the position in order to deliver the client service results. So it's all linked together. And the key activities, they also help determine the primary purpose of the work, and again, linked to determining the occupational group of the position. And the last piece are the work characteristics. This refers to what we saw in terms of the Canadian Human Rights Act criteria, skills, efforts, responsibilities, working conditions. So this is all described in the job description to describe and support the job evaluation. just a quick note to say that job descriptions may be unique or standardized, or sometimes still called generic job description. So a unique job description, it applies to only one position, whereas a standardized or generic job description describes many identical or similar positions. So if I can give an example, you may have two positions. One buys fuel for planes and the other buys fuels for ships. But they have a common key activity, which is to buy fuel. And those are the type of activities that would be described in a generic or standardized job description, because they don't go into too much details, those job descriptions. They stick to core functions. And this is a good practice to have standardized job descriptions when possible, because it saves time and effort in describing the work of many positions rather than just one at a time. And it also makes it easier to compare positions among each other, which is part of the work we also have in job evaluation. We'll see that a bit later on. And it also helps employees with career development, deployment, assignment, because we concentrate by describing this work and evaluating this work in a generic or standardized fashion. We concentrate on the tasks that really make a difference between one level or another within a group. So again, this is a good practice to be more efficient and effective in job description and job evaluation. So this is something you may hear about generic or standardized job description. If we go again a bit in more detail in the next piece of information for job evaluation, we have the organizational chart. So there's a brief example there, but it describes the positions that make up an organization and their reporting relationship. And it helps us understand how the work is allocated within an organization. The organizational chart, it should show the supervisory, the peer, and subordinate position of the position we are looking at. So this helps us understand the organizational context of the position evaluated, and also helps, again, understand how the work is allocated to people looking at the chart. Quick note to mention, authority is always delegated from the top down. This is how hierarchy works. And different hierarchical levels exist within an organization, but it's important to know that each of the steps in the hierarchy presents significant difference in terms of the knowledge and the decision-making authority that exists between those positions. So again, this helps us understand the context of the position and the level of responsibility assigned to it. So go back to the other piece of information, the occupational group and subgroups. So each of the occupational group is made up of jobs that have similar functions. And this goes back to the poll in the beginning. So there are like the two letters, and it describes what type of services are delivered by those positions. So we have administrative services are delivered by AS jobs. Economics and social science services are delivered by EC, and information technology services by IT. So those are just a few examples. So what I'll do is I'll share a screen. Just give me a second. I have the group here. So here is where the occupational groups are all listed. So it's just to give you an overview. So there are many of them. So the groups are here. The classifications are here. Sometimes they're not quite the same. We're still aligning them. That's a long process. But you can see each of, like EC is here, Economics and Social Science Services, Executive, EX, Financial Management, FI, personnel administration, PE. So all of the groups are listed here. So it was just to show an example. There are links in the presentation that you may visit to if you want further information. So I will go back to the presentation. Okay. So each group has a detailed definition that shows what type of jobs fit in the group and those that do not. And those occupational groups, as I mentioned, they are designated by a two-letter abbreviation that is a shorthand for the full occupational group title. And also mentioning that each group has a different number of levels depending on which group. So for example, the EC group has 8 levels. So you can go from EC1 to EC8. This is just one example. So altogether, like we saw, there are 28 occupational groups that describe the work performed in the core public administration. And it's also important to note that each occupational group is represented by a bargaining agent, with the exception of the EX group, the executive, the law management group, the LC group, and the human resources management group. So classification standards, again, I just want to show you one example of what the classification standard looks like, but it's going to be very brief because it's very technical. Okay. So here I have the EC job evaluation standard. So you can just see the components here of the standard. So there's describe the factors, the elements, the other criteria that are used to establish the relative value of the work within the occupational group. So I won't go into detail. I put a link that has all this information. You can see all the job evaluation standards on the website that I shared. They are all there, so you can see what they are. All the elements that are in there. So it's just to give you a brief overview. The group definition is in there, the boundaries of each level, and also benchmark positions. Those are positions that are already evaluated that we compare the position we evaluate to. So we'll go back to my presentation. Okay. So okay, so again, just a quick note to say, classification is not based on employee performance. So it's based on the duties assigned to the position. It's not based on the skills and qualifications of an employee, but rather on the requirements of a position. And it's not based on the volume of tasks accomplished by an employee. So we look at the type of work. We don't look at the volume of duties or how frequently they are performed. Also, a quick note to explain classification conversions, because you may have heard that this is happening. So this is the process of modernizing job evaluation. So we look at an existing position's job description and we evaluate them all within a group with a new job evaluation standard that is approved by a Treasury board. So a conversion, it may serve to combine functions that were previously included in other occupational groups. For example, PA, Program and Administrative Services Group, which will be a new group eventually that will include other positions that are currently in the AS, CR, IS, PM occupational groups. So they will all be combined eventually under the PA, and there will be a new job evaluation tool to evaluate those positions, and also new pay rates that will be determined through collective bargaining eventually. but there's no date yet set on this one. Just a quick note to say that a conversion, it's not a reclassification. So a conversion, it's a change in the method of evaluating positions within a group. So it affects every job within this occupational group. We have to review everything with the new tool. A reclassification, it's specific to one job or one position, and it's based on the evolution of the work assigned to this position. So it may lead to a change in occupational group, subgroup, and or level of that specific job or position. So just to confirm the difference between the two. Quickly going over responsibilities of all involved in classification. For the delegated manager, the first player involved in classification, they need to ensure that job descriptions of positions for which they are responsible are accurate and up to date, and approve such job descriptions and answer questions on the job descriptions or classification from their employees. Second, I won't go through all this because I'm conscious of time, but this is the process used by classification advisors to look at position job evaluation. And lastly, what concerns you most are responsibilities of the employee. So employees, they are entitled to have an up-to-date job description for their position, which they can obtain from their manager. Keep their contact information in the pay and HR system to ensure they are receiving decisions relative to their positions in a timely fashion. Communicate with your manager if you have questions regarding your job description or obtaining explanations following a classification decision affecting your position. And in case of a disagreement on your job description or on a classification decision affecting your position, you may contact your union representative. So here are the useful links that you can visit to see the tools and documents that we just discussed.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation there, Evelyn. We're getting pretty close to time, so I'm just going to try and combine a couple of questions together and just talk quickly about how to move up certain levels within a specific classification. You said that it was mostly about the actual level and qualifications, but how does one look to potentially move up in level, say from an EC4 to an EC5?
Okay, this is, like we said, this is mostly based on the qualification and skills of the individual in the position. So in terms of moving up, really it's through development and applying to higher level jobs. The position itself may evolve as well, but this is more defined by the responsible manager who assigns the duties to the position.
Okay, perfect. So unfortunately, we are already at time here. Had to wrap up this Q&A session. And once again, for the people who asked all the questions, thank you for submitting them and thank you for thumbsing up there. Sorry that we couldn't get to more of your questions, as this is only a 30-minute time slot here, but I'm going to toss things back over to Joshua to close things out, and then the French session will resume just afterwards after that.
Awesome. So thanks very much, Marcus and Evelyn. And we just have one final polling question for you. So was this session a good use of your time? So you'll see this on your screen, yes, no, or I don't know. Definitely, I think this is a discussion that could probably take a solid 90 minutes. But this was a great intro to classification. So thanks very much to Marcus and to Evelyn for this. And thank you for joining us today. So as a reminder, the session will be repeated in French.